Discover the amazing truth. 13-year-old girl exposed the shocking reality of forced marriage. Maya Martin's heart raced as she stood in front of her computer, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Just yesterday, she'd stumbled across a conversation that chilled her to the bone, a whisper of her classmate Amina facing an arranged marriage. The thought alone sent a shiver through her. How could anyone, let alone someone with a bright future, be forced into something so unimaginable? The idyllic streets of Maplewood felt like they were closing in on her. She took a deep breath, but it only intensified her racing heart. Should she use her voice to expose this? Was she prepared to take a stand against something so deeply rooted in her community? The issue gnawed at her as shadows began to lengthen outside her window. For the first time, her love for journalism felt weighty, almost like a burden. If she dug deeper, she might uncover something the world wasn't ready to face. Yet the fear of upsetting friends, neighbors, and even her family bubbled up inside her, causing her stomach to twist. What if they turned against her for questioning the traditions they held dear? Before she could plunge into the unknown, Maya recalled how her parents raised her on principles of hard work and integrity. But here she was, caught in a moral dilemma she didn't ask for. The thought of Amina, dreams of education slipping through her fingers, clashed painfully with the notion of community loyalty. What if Maya's investigation led to consequences she couldn't control? Just then, a notification pinged on her phone, yanking her from her spiraling thoughts, an alert about the shifts happening on YouTube. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Maya shook her head at the distraction, returning to her own burdens. Would she stand and fight for Amina, or retreat into silence and watch dreams shatter? Tension coiled tighter as she considered Amina's recent worried glances, the way her silence echoed in the hallways, seeming to scream for help. What if she lost Amina's trust by not speaking up? Each day that passed weighed heavier, the impending marriage hanging like a storm cloud, unshakable and threatening. Maya felt an insistent urge to ignite a spark of change, to illuminate the truth lurking beneath the surface of their perfect town. But as she leaned closer to uncover the truth, a chill gripped her heart. What if her investigation unveiled secrets that shouldn't be told? Caught in the crossfire between loyalty and justice, she held Amina's future in her hands. The stakes were high, and the fear of repercussions loomed large. The town might be small, but the truth could explode its foundations, placing Maya at the center of chaos she couldn't predict. What was she willing to sacrifice for Amina's freedom? Would she bury her own moral compass in silence, then live in fear of the truths she unearths? The jagged edge of her conscience pushed her forward, but uncertainty loomed with every choice she faced. Maya stood at the precipice, caught in a whirlwind of emotion. What choice would she make when the truth threatened to unravel everything she held dear? The whispers of responsibility echoed in her mind, and her heart raced with the weight of impending decisions. In a town where tradition reigned supreme, how could she challenge the depths of authority, especially when it cut so close to her own heart? With her mind racing, Maya stepped away from her computer, her heart thudding against her chest. The sunlight was fading, casting long shadows across her room, mirroring the weight of the decision pressing on her shoulders. Amina's fate loomed like an ever-watchful specter, forcing Maya to confront the stark reality that she could no longer remain a bystander. The once comforting environment of her home now felt stifling, suffocating with unspoken expectations and cultural dictates. Maya paced the room, the rhythm of her footsteps quickening as she mentally rehearsed the conversation she envisioned having with Amina. She would approach her, ask questions, and not stop until the truth spilled out like water from a cracked dam. But the thought of Amina's reaction triggered an unsettling knot in her stomach. Would her friend resent the intrusion? Would she feel exposed, vulnerable to the judgmental gaze of their community? Breath hitching, Maya grappled with the potential fallout. What if her investigation did break down the invisible walls that confined Amina? Or worse, what if it exacerbated the pressure from their families? Her pulse quickened as the deep-rooted fears of familial rejection began to swirl in her mind. The fragility of her social standing felt like glass beneath her feet. One wrong move could send her crashing to the ground. Grabbing her notebook, she began jotting down her thoughts, a stream of consciousness spilling onto the page. When had she grown so passive, she wondered? Journalism was supposed to be her weapon, her path to challenging the status quo. She had always envisioned herself boldly tearing apart lies with words, seeking justice for those who remained voiceless. Yet here she was, paralyzed by fear. Realizing that she stood at a crucial juncture in her own narrative, Maya recognized that this was more than Amina's story. It was a test of her own integrity. As she scribbled furiously, fragments of inspiration bounced around in her head. Amina was strong, bright, and deserving of a future filled with possibilities. Maya felt the stirrings of determination grow. She could approach Amina as a supportive ally, not just as a journalist. This could become a profound partnership, united against the daunting force of tradition. But who would she have to confront? Was there a sense of community leaders who may disapprove of her actions? The thought sent shivers coursing through her, but deep down, a fierce resolve began to ignite. Perhaps her insights, her courage, could be the catalyst for a transformative conversation among their peers, or even within families. Emboldened by a newfound clarity, she took a deep breath as an idea emerged. What if she used her blog to share her thoughts about the importance of education and choice for young women? It would be a gentle nudge, an invitation to discuss rather than a blunt force that would alienate her from the very people she loved. Panic surged as she envisioned the backlash. How would her parents react? Would they chastise her for challenging the beliefs they held sacred? Yet, with every pulse of fear, her determination solidified. After all, wasn't it their voices that had instilled a sense of right and wrong within her? With her heart pounding, Maya moved back to her computer, ready to write her first post. Encouragement welled through her, propelling her fingers over the keyboard. Suddenly, a sudden thought struck her like lightning, a realization of the uphill battle ahead. What if she wasn't alone in this fight? What if there were others in Maplewood who shared her concerns? What if she reached out for allies, fellow students, or teachers who believed in change? As she typed, Maya felt her sense of agency grow, a flicker of hope illuminating the dark corners of uncertainty. Yet, as she hovered over the publish button, a new thought crept in. Was she prepared for the potential backlash? With a final deliberate click, she took a leap. The post went live, and her heart raced with anticipation. Had she opened a door to possibility, or unleashed a tempest of resistance? In that moment, Maya sat back, lost in a swirl of emotions, a mixture of exhilaration and anxiety washing over her. The chance to redefine her own role was in her hands, but what storm would her words unleash in return? The thought left her breathless. She had ignited the spark, but now the real challenge awaited. Would the fire burn bright enough to light a path for Amina? Maya leaned back in her chair, aware that every decision forward would entwine her fate with Amina's and the pulse of their community. What would happen when the dust settled? The weight of her choice pressed heavy on her mind as she glanced furtively at her phone, half expecting both a reaction and a potential outcry. But waiting for a response, Maya realized one thing. She had stepped into a new role that demanded every ounce of courage she had. The moment for confrontation was drawing near. Would she stand firm in the face of looming challenges? Maya sat in the dim light of her room, fingers poised over her keyboard, resisting the urge to refresh her blog's homepage for feedback. Time seemed to stretch as she sank deeper into contemplation. Everyone had their own thresholds of acceptance, and today she had pushed against hers. What if her words stirred an avalanche of dissent? She shivered at the thought, recalling the hushed tones and sidelong glances she had grown accustomed to, the quiet judgments that clung to her like a heavy fog. It was time to face Amina. Tomorrow she would approach her friend, not as a journalist dissecting a plight, but as a confidant ready to listen. Would Amina recognize Maya's earnest intentions, or perceive hostility in her inquiries? This wasn't merely about exposing truths. This was about navigating the labyrinth of friendship entangled with cultural nuances. As twilight settled outside her window, an imperceptible shift occurred within Maya. She wasn't merely reacting anymore. She was now an instigator. Yet with that role came an intimidating weight. Stepping into this position required a newfound fortitude. She recalled her journalism classes, where advocacy had been stressed as a pillar of the craft, but mere ideation was not enough. Execution demanded relentless perseverance and a readiness to confront the uncertainty lying in the shadows. Memories of her mother's stories flickered through her mind. Tales of brave women who challenged norms, stories that had once inspired her now felt heavy with caution. Would leaning into her mother's legacy mean risking everything? The desire to carve a path of her own mingled anxiously with the fear of familial disapproval. She pulled out her notebook again, scribbling questions she'd like to ask Amina. Would she prioritize her friend's voice over the collective voice of their community? Risking her friendship for a chance to challenge the status quo felt monumental. Almost instinctively, she began detailing a plan on how to engage her without imposing. A mind map formed as she crafted her approach. Empathy first, curiosity second, and respect always. That night, sleep eluded her, spiraling her thoughts into overdrive. What if Amina felt trapped in the expectations placed on her? Maya pondered how to approach the delicate subject of her friend's future. The stakes were real, and it left her restless. Morning dawned, bringing sunlight streaming through her window with a clarity that challenged the turmoil of last night. Armed with her thoughts and steaming coffee, she prepared herself to brave the uncertain terrain of conversation. Reaching out to her friends outside the blog had ignited a flicker of hope. Maybe she could build a network of support, even if informal, an underground movement of young women striving for their choices amidst the traditional fabric of their lives. Her phone buzzed on the table, startling her. A notification flashed on the screen, and a wave of anxiety washed over her. Comments. Steadying her breath, she opened her blog page, and in those first moments of confusion, a smile broke through. It wasn't an outcry of dissent, but rather a discussion. Other voices echoed her sentiments, shared their stories, and offered words of solidarity. The relief was visceral. This wasn't merely her venture anymore, it was becoming a shared dialogue. Inspiration coursed through her veins. She had not only taken a brave step, but had ignited a spark that others could fan into a flame. The battle would be long and uncertain, but today she felt equipped. The weight of her path ahead morphed into a responsibility she was ready to shoulder, not just for Amina, but for the many voices that remained unheard. Yet momentum only fueled her questions. How many were ready to join her in this burgeoning quest? What recourse would she have against those who'd want her silence and compliance? As she gathered her things and stepped into the day, anticipation swirled within her. The conversation with Amina loomed large, leaving her unsettled, yet eager. The moment for action had arrived. Would her courage withstand the scrutiny of those unwilling to change? Maya took a deep breath, steeling herself for this pivotal confrontation. Tomorrow's discussion could redefine everything, not just for Amina, but for herself as well. Would she find the strength to fight for both their futures? Maya's heart raced as she made her way to the cafe where she and Amina had agreed to meet. The familiar sounds of bustling city life surrounded her, yet they felt distant, eclipsed by the intensity of her own thoughts. Each step served as a reminder of the precarious balance she was now trying to maintain, friendship interwoven with truth, trust laced with vulnerability. Arriving at their designated spot, Maya scanned the area, her eyes landing on Amina seated at a small round table. There she was, her friend, wrapped in a blend of anticipation and trepidation, oblivious to the whirlpool of emotions within Maya. Giving a quick wave, Maya approached, her composure betraying her inner turmoil. "Amina," she greeted, forcing a smile. "It's good to see you." "Hi, Maya." Amina's voice was steady, but a flicker of apprehension danced in her eyes. They exchanged small talk, but it was a mere prelude to the deeper conversation that loomed ahead. As they sipped their drinks, Maya's thoughts cascaded like a waterfall. What was at stake? Amina's future? Their friendship? The atmosphere thickened with unspoken narratives, and it was clear that the moment of honesty beckoned. Maya cleared her throat, summoning every ounce of courage she had. "Amina, I read something recently that really made me think about our choices as young women. It got me wondering about what you want for your own life." Amina perked up, her expression shifting. "What do you mean?" "I mean, we all have expectations laid out for us. You know how your parents talk about traditions and their plans for you, right? Maya ventured cautiously, gauging Amina's reaction. Amina shifted in her seat, her gaze dropping. Of course, but it's my life, you know. I have to think about what they want. It's complicated. That word, complicated, resonated within Maya, its layers of meaning bubbling to the surface. But what if your life doesn't have to be molded by those expectations? What if there's more for you beyond what others see? I just want you to know you have a voice worth listening to. Maya pushed gently, her heart pounding as she offered the safety net of her unwavering support. They locked eyes, and in that moment, Maya saw the flicker of hope igniting within Amina's expression. I've thought about it, Amina finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. But it's scary. What if I disappoint everyone? That's the risk we take, Maya said boldly, feeling her own fear ebb away. We can't live just to fulfill the dreams of others. There's strength in exploring our own paths. Amina's brow furrowed as the weight of the discussion sank in. But how do I even begin to make those choices without clashing with family? Maya hesitated, unfurling possibilities within her mind. You could start small, talk to them, express how you feel, maybe even bring them into these conversations. I believe you have the ability to shift the narrative. The tension shifted palpably, and Maya felt a surge of pride as Amina's shoulders relaxed. They shared the silence, both drawing strength from the profound implications of their dialogue. Maya realized that she was no longer just an instigator. She had become a catalyst, igniting change in Amina's perspective. Yet, as elation coursed through her, doubt whispered on the fringes. She pondered how Amina would respond to the inevitable backlash from tradition-bound family members. Would they accept this new voice emerging from their daughter? Could Maya truly support Amina through the storms that would come? Maya, Amina's voice broke into her thoughts. What if I lose them? In that moment, Maya understood the weight of her own journey. She was no longer just an advocate for Amina. She stood at the precipice of her own resolute evolution. You might, but you might also find the strength to regain their respect. This could become your truth, and once you embrace it, they may too. As resolve surged within her, Maya felt the enormity of their conversation. The possibilities were vast, yet fraught with danger. She understood for the first time that the narrative wouldn't merely transform for Amina. It held the potential to reshape her own identity. Would they both have the courage to step into the unknown together? The air was thick with anticipation, a prelude to the heart-wrenching choices yet to come. As Amina considered her words, Maya's heart echoed with a question that loomed larger than either of them had anticipated. What truths were now ready to unfold, and at what cost? Maya walked away from the cafe, her mind still swirling with the intensity of her conversation with Amina. Gone was the lightness that usually accompanied her stroll through the city. Instead, she felt a weight pressing on her chest, a combination of hope and dread. She had ignited a spark in Amina, but the path ahead was fraught with uncertainty. It was more than just Amina's truth at stake. It was a reflection of her own unexamined beliefs about friendship, loyalty, and the expectations cast upon them by their families. As she navigated the busy streets, Maya questioned her own motives. Was she merely a bystander hoping to nudge her friend toward independence? Or had she unwittingly thrust herself into a role that required her to sacrifice safety for authenticity? Every step felt like a revelation. The enormity of what they had discussed was just beginning to sink in. She paused outside a small bookstore, a haven of solace. The warm lighting inside beckoned her, an invitation to lose herself in the pages of stories that promised adventure, courage, and transformation. Clutching her coffee, she hesitated briefly before stepping inside. Once immersed among the shelves, she found herself gravitating toward the personal development section. Titles leapt out at her, each one offering a different semblance of self-discovery, a theme that resonated profoundly following her conversation with Amina. She rifled through a few books, touching their covers as if seeking answers through mere proximity. An idea began to crystallize in her mind. Her own journey of self-exploration was equally crucial if she was to support Amina in her quest for autonomy. A particular book caught her eye, Unleashing Your Inner Voice. She flipped through the chapters, skimming passages that emphasized the importance of self-advocacy and healthy boundaries. The words spoke directly to her, a reminder that her own voice needed to emerge from the shadows of expectation she had long accepted. With a newfound determination, she decided to purchase the book, seeing it not just as a guide for herself, but also as a resource she could share with Amina. Later that evening in her cramped apartment, Maya settled onto her bed, the book opened before her. As she read, she began jotting down reflections and thoughts. The act of writing transformed her burgeoning ideas into a concrete form, allowing her to dissect her feelings about family, choice, and independence. What had always felt abstract in her mind now existed in black and white, taking on a clarity she had not anticipated. However, with clarity came pain. She wrestled with the realization that her own family's expectations had silenced her aspirations for far too long. What dreams had she stifled to adhere to an image of who she was supposed to be? The thought marinated within her, spilling over into regrets she had buried deep. The dinner table conversations where her voice faded into the background became a litany of missed opportunities, and the fear of challenging her family's norms crystallized into a deep-seated anxiety. But with realization came resolve. No more would she allow fear to dictate her choices. As she scribbled down a list of steps she could take towards her own empowerment, each bullet point felt like a promise. Each handwritten mark echoed Amina's struggle, reflective of the larger battle they faced in navigating the confines of family expectations. Maya's heartbeat quickened as possibilities unfurled. In that moment of self-discovery, she felt the pulse of a new narrative forming. Could her journey of self-assertion ignite Amina's struggle more powerfully? The thought sent shivers of excitement down her spine, even as questions loomed large about the possible consequences. She closed her eyes, focusing on a fresh determination. Change was imminent, echoing the challenge that awaited not just Amina, but herself as well. They were both at the brink of dismantling the narratives that bound them, but would they find the strength to carry it through? A deep breath later, Maya got up to prepare for the next steps in this evolving journey of self and friendship, unaware of the confrontations that lay ahead. The time had come to face not only the external expectations of their families, but the inner turmoil that had silently dictated their lives thus far. What awaited them in their pursuit of authenticity? Only time would tell. Maya awoke the next morning with an intoxicating blend of anxiety and exhilaration swirling inside her. The newfound clarity from the previous evening's revelations pulsed beneath her skin like a live wire. Today was not just another weekday, it was the day she planned to confront the discomfort festering within her. She whipped up a strong cup of coffee, her resolve solidifying with each swirl of steam rising from the mug. Glancing at the ticking clock, she felt the weight of time pressing down on her. She had a meeting planned with Amina. The mental tick-tock echoed her heartbeat, reminding her of the urgency that filled her mind. They had drawn the first thread in the tapestry of vulnerability, but to weave depth into their shared dialogue required commitment. As she got ready, Maya faced her reflection and braced herself for introspection, forcing herself to confront the woman staring back. What did she want to say? Not just surface-level platitudes about courage or loyalty, but raw, honest truths that could pierce through the layers of familial expectation binding them. She grabbed a notepad, jotting down key points she planned to touch on with Amina, revealing the depths of her own experiences in hopes of encouraging her friend. The cafe where they planned to meet remained unchanged, yet it felt like the center of a profound shift in Maya's life. As she settled into a corner table, she noticed her hands trembling slightly, the paper crinkling beneath her grip. Not because she didn't believe in their conversation. Rather, it was the anticipation of facing the realities they had both avoided. Amina arrived, her presence instantly injecting warmth into the cold surroundings. However, the tension lingering between them was palpable. Maya sensed that her friend was wrestling with her own hesitations about the path ahead. "Hey," Amina murmured, her smile lacking its usual vigor. Maya smiled back, but would this spark the deeper dialogue she hoped for? She took a deep breath and leaned in. "I've been thinking a lot about everything we discussed." Amina's gaze fell, drawing inward. Maya witnessed a flicker of vulnerability, her friend's battle visibly written across her face. This moment was pivotal, a convergence of their individual conflicts. "Amina, I realize it's not just your journey we're discussing. It's mine too, and I need to acknowledge that." Her voice gained steadiness, buoyed by the authenticity she was striving to express. I've spent so much time silencing what I want in fear of disappointing my family. Amina's eyes brightened, curious yet cautiously engaged. Really? I thought you had it all figured out. With a hint of hesitation, Maya continued, I don't. I feel like I've never really articulated what I want from my life either. It's been easier to meet expectations than to confront what I truly care about. Maya's heart raced. Would revealing this inner conflict help Amina do the same? As the conversation unfolded, Amina began to open up, sharing her own fears and uncertainties. Maya felt the barriers between them dissolving, revealing a shared vulnerability. They both stood along the precipice of change, united in their struggles against family norms that sought to define them. But just as they began to feel a rush of potential, a familiar voice cut across the cafe, jolting them back to reality. Amina, what are you doing here? Amina's sister, her demeanor sharp and authoritative, stood at the entrance. Maya's breath caught in her throat. The moment of confrontation arrived faster than she anticipated. Would Amina shrink back into the shadows, as had been so often the case? Maya's pulse quickened. The stakes were rising, the conversation they were forging teetering on the edge of interruption. This wasn't just about them anymore. It was a fight for the authenticity they craved against the demands of family loyalty. Waves of uncertainty crashed around her, the air charged with tension. Amina, she urged silently, this is your moment. What would her friend choose? Would she step into her truth, or retreat into the confines they both sought to escape? The ground felt poised to shake beneath them. Only one thing was certain. They were being forced to confront what it meant to be truly independent in a world that wished to coerce them back into submission. Amina's sister stood there, an imposing figure casting a long shadow over the fragile intimacy that had started to unfold. Maya's heart raced as she watched the struggle flicker across Amina's face, a battlefield of loyalty versus authenticity. The room seemed to shrink as tension coiled tight, each breath amplifying the stakes of the moment. Just meeting a friend, Amina replied slowly, each word a careful step on unstable ground. The defiance in her voice quivered, masked by a veil of unease. To Maya, it felt as though Amina was fighting against a tide always threatening to pull her under. Your parents are worried. You can't just disappear like this, her sister pressed, voice sharp enough to cut through the ambient noise of grinds and chatter. Maya felt the atmosphere shift. Amina's resolve was under siege. She clenched her hands around her coffee cup, silently willing her friend to push back, to assert her desire to reclaim agency in her own life. This was it, Amina's moment to seize control of her narrative. Maya leaned forward, a burst of urgency propelling her. Amina, whatever they expect, you don't have to live that way. You're not alone in this. You can choose. Amina's gaze flickered, uncertainty clouding her features. But what if I disappoint them? They've always wanted, or needed, Maya interrupted, a new confidence sparking in her voice. You're not an obligation. You're not a pawn in their life story. This is your chance to write your own chapter. As her words hung in the air, a brief silence fell over the table, the reality of Amina's sister's presence hanging heavy. Amina's resolve teetered, but in that decisive moment, Maya recognized a shift in the air. Amina inhaled deeply, the rush of breath containing a blend of determination and fear, an acknowledgement of the crux that lay before her. Mom and Dad won't understand, Amina murmured, her voice a thread woven tight with apprehension. Understanding is a journey, not a destination, Maya stated firmly, her eyes locked onto Amina's, willing her to challenge the tide. You owe it to yourself to figure out what you want. They'll either learn to embrace you or miss out on who you truly are. Amina's sister shifted, impatience radiating from her. We need to go, she commanded, but Amina hesitated, her fingers gripping the edge of the table. Maybe I don't want to go, she finally whispered, a tremor of rebellion making its way into her calm facade. The quiet, steady determination emanating from her was palpable, each phrase aligning closer to a realization. Maya's heart soared. This is about you now. Choose freedom over fear. Amina swallowed hard, her eyes glistening with unshed emotion. What if I can't confront them? What if I don't have the strength? Strength comes from the choices you make, even in fear. Just acting on what you feel is already a step towards defining who you are. Together we can figure it out, Maya responded, fierce conviction blending into her resolve. In that crucial moment, an essential realization anchored within Maya. It wasn't just about Amina's liberation, but also her own awakening and willingness to be the catalyst of change. She began understanding her own potential to influence, to ignite transformation, not just in her friend, but within herself as well. Maya noticed Amina's posture shifting. She was no longer folding into herself. The casual way she clutched her phone had lessened, making room for newfound resolve. "Is this the moment?" Amina asked, prepared to turn toward the confrontation that loomed ahead. Maya held her breath, realizing they stood on the cusp of something momentous, the confrontation of dual truths they had both feared. "Yes, it is. You can stand firm, and I'll be right here with you." And just as they began to brace themselves, ready to act, the sister stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "What are you doing? You know you can't." Maya felt the weight of their choice hanging thick in the air. Their moment was here, but would they seize it or allow it to dissolve? The collective fate of their paths lay in the balance, one decision shattering the silence, destiny intertwining with newfound courage. They were on the verge of rewriting everything they thought possible. Overwhelmed, Maya realized she was not just supporting Amina, she was on the precipice of embracing her own liberation. As Amina's sister intruded further into their space, a decision crystallized. The time for passivity was over. Maya sensed the swell of opportunity. A fierce confrontation was brewing. Here, at the crossroads of decisive action, everything was about to change. What awaited them on the other side of this confrontation? Amina's heart thumped in her chest, the rhythm echoing the turmoil swirling around them. This wasn't merely a confrontation, it was an awakening, an intersection of the past and the future. She felt the weight of Maya's unwavering gaze. It anchored her, a tether amidst the chaos radiating from her sister. Amina's sister leaned in, her voice a low hiss. "You'll regret this, Amina. You know what Mom and Dad will say. You can't just walk away." Those words sliced through Amina, igniting a wildfire of frustration and resolve. Regret had always loomed over her, a specter reminding her of every untaken path. But now she felt the fierce embrace of possibility wrapping around her, stronger than the fear of familial disappointment. Maya, sensing the fragility of the moment, turned her focus on Amina's sister. "She's not a child anymore. She can make her own decisions about her life," Maya stated, misgivings about confrontation now a distant memory. A protective instinct surged within her, pushing aside her previous apprehensions. Amina felt a surge of admiration for Maya. This was no longer just about her. Moments earlier, she had been teetering on the brink of fear, yet here she stood, inspired by her friend's bravery. "I don't want what you want for me," Amina finally declared, her voice unwavering. "This is my life. I need to explore, to learn who I am outside of your expectations." A flicker of shock crossed her sister's face, replaced quickly by indignation. "How can you say that? You're throwing away everything we've built." "Not everything," Amina countered, sensing the space between them opening like a chasm. "I'm trying to build something new, something real. You can't define who I am forever." The room was thick with silence. Even the clinking of cups and the low hum of chatter from other patrons faded into the background. Amina felt exposed yet liberated, her declaration hanging delicately in the air, as if daring anyone to challenge it. Maya stepped closer, her spirit igniting Amina's resolve further. "No more hiding. We can support each other, find our paths, even if they lead us in different directions. That doesn't mean we have to cut ties. It's time to support each other for who we are, not who we're expected to be." Amina's sister scoffed, eyes narrowing with disbelief. "You think this changes anything? You're still my little sister. Do you think running away will fix this family? You'll just end up lost." "Lost!" Amina felt a surge of anger, the words igniting a fierce clarity within her. "How can I be lost if I'm finally being true to myself? Isn't it worse to live for someone else at the cost of my own happiness?" Amina could sense a palpable shift in the atmosphere. With every word spoken, layers of uncertainty were being shed. Her sister's face reflected a blend of resentment and confusion, caught off guard by Amina's sudden surge of confidence. Maya found the courage to take this moment further. "Amina, remember when we talked about the choices that shape us? This isn't just a choice about your family, it's about becoming the person you're meant to be. Amina met Maya's eyes, each flicker of understanding freeing her further from the weight of her sister's expectations. This was not a rebellion, but a pilgrimage toward her true self. Confrontation was a fertile ground for growth. She had felt it the moment her sister stepped into the cafe. "Amina," her sister seethed, pushing forward. "If you leave this family, don't expect to come back when things get hard. We won't be here." That statement stung, twisting Amina's stomach. But she would no longer allow herself to be held hostage by guilt or fear. "You think loyalty to family means losing oneself? If you truly care, maybe you'll understand that my happiness is bound to be part of this family's strength." Moments stretched, an eternity passing in the space between them, until finally Amina's sister stepped back, frustration morphing into something like resolve. "You won't win this." Amina felt a rush of empowerment. It was no longer about winning, it was about discovering who she could become. As her sister turned to leave, anxiety mixed with an exhilarating high. Yet, in that instant of newfound freedom, a lingering doubt crept in. What would come next? Maya placed her hand on Amina's shoulder. "Are you ready for this journey?" Amina inhaled deeply, the air filled with potential and uncertainty. "I think I am, but what if I falter?" "Then we'll be there to catch each other," Maya replied, determination lacing her words. Together they faced the unknown ahead. Amina's mind raced with possibility, and for the first time, she truly felt alive. What awaited them on this uncharted path? Was it liberation or the brink of deeper conflict? The morning sun filtered through the gaps in Amina's curtains, casting a golden glow onto the hardwood floor. It illuminated the clutter of her room, books, journals, and abandoned sketches of landscapes she dreamed of exploring. A wave of uncertainty washed over her as she sat up in bed, memories of yesterday's confrontation replaying in her mind. She had made a choice, one that felt monumental yet tenuous, but the resonance of her sister's words echoed persistently. "You'll regret this." Amina slid her feet onto the floor, grounding herself in the reality of her new decision. This was uncharted territory, where dreams met apprehension. Instead of retreating, she felt the urge to confront the lingering doubts and insecurities that danced at the edges of her mind. "Today is the day," she whispered to herself. She needed a plan, a tangible way to move forward that merged her aspirations with practicality. This would require courage, not just to envision a different life, but to actively carve it out. Maya was waiting for her with coffee as they met at their favorite cafe. Amina felt a swirl of emotions at the sight of her friend, who had stood by her side. There was a certainty in Maya, a resolve that pushed Amina just enough to face her fears. "We need to define what exploring looks like," Maya said, a gleam of excitement evident in her eyes. "What are the things you've always wanted to do? Let's put it all out there." Amina hesitated, a shadow of doubt inching back in. "I always wanted to travel, to see new places, but..." "But what?" Maya prompted, leaning in closer. "I'm not ready. What if I fail? What if I can't handle the responsibilities?" The pressure of her family's expectations threatened to choke her determination, reminiscent of the voice she had just silenced, but still whispered in the back of her head. Maya took a sip of her coffee, steadying her tone. "Everyone fears failure, but it's not about how often we fall, it's about how we get back up. We can't plan every step, Amina. What if you just took a small leap?" Amina closed her eyes, envisioning herself hiking through a national park, feeling the earth beneath her feet and the wind in her hair. The freedom felt intoxicating yet out of reach, like a dream she feared had slipped away. She needed a tangible stepping stone, something to ground this dream in reality. When they left the cafe, Amina's mind was racing with possibilities. They passed a local art studio that offered classes in painting and photography. A thought sprouted. What if she signed up? Art had always been a safe space, a way to express the whirlwind of emotions inside her. "I'm going to take that painting class," Amina declared suddenly, surprising even herself. Maya beamed, her enthusiasm infectious. "Yes, that's the spirit. It's not just a class, it's a step toward discovering yourself, the artist, the traveler, all parts of you." Amina's heart raced with excitement and fear, but there was something unapologetic about her decision that felt right. She made her way to the art studio after their talk, entering with a mix of apprehension and anticipation. She signed up, surprising herself with the boldness of her choice. Later, as she walked home, the weight of her sister's words lightened with each stride. Each step felt powerful, though uncertainty still tugged at her. The real test was ahead. Would she be able to stay committed to her journey despite the hurdles waiting in the shadows? Her pulse quickened when she realized this path could lead her to confront not only her family's expectations, but also her internal conflicts. The old beliefs that had stifled her aspirations for so long. It was a battle between who she was meant to be and who she had been told to become. Yet amidst the looming doubts, a flicker of hope ignited. What would Amina discover about herself in the coming weeks? Would her newfound courage withstand the inevitable tests that lay ahead? As uncertainty cloaked her thoughts, one question loomed larger than the rest. What risks was she willing to take to shape her own destiny? Maya gazed at her computer screen as she clicked on her blog's analytics, a rush of adrenaline coursing through her veins. In just a short time since her last post, she had gained an unexpected surge of followers, people who resonated with her words about freedom, education, and the importance of choice. It was a moment of triumph. A few days prior, she'd stood on shaky ground, unsure if her voice had the power to make an impact. Today, she held proof that it did. She had set out to support Amina on her journey to autonomy, yet in the process, she had discovered her own passion for advocacy, a passion that had been waiting silently to be unleashed. All those late-night brainstorming sessions and moments spent facing her fears had culminated in something tangible. Her words, now ricocheting through their small town, resonated with others seeking change. Emboldened by this new realization, Maya took a deep breath and decided to share her next insights with her growing audience. This was her moment. Not only had she chosen to confront the difficult truths of her friendship with Amina, but she had also thrust herself into the role of an advocate for those too afraid to speak up. As she began typing, a burgeoning confidence fueled her creativity. She wrote about their conversations, the strength found in vulnerability, and the power of facing familial expectations together. This wasn't just Amina's story. It was a collective narrative unfolding before them, a testament to the courage residing within young women striving for independence. Later that week, Amina called her, excitement bubbling through the phone. "Maya, you won't believe this. I started my painting class yesterday and it felt amazing. I didn't just paint, I created. I felt free." The sound of Amina's voice filled Maya with joy, an affirmation that her friend's journey was well underway. "That's incredible! I knew you had it in you." As she reinforced her friend's triumph, Maya couldn't help but recognize her own growth in their bond. They were no longer confined by familial obligations or societal pressures. They were allies in their struggle. Maya had organized a small gathering at a local park where they could share stories of their journeys, each aiming to inspire and encourage others. The idea sparked a nervous thrill within her, the chance to foster a supportive community through the simple act of sharing their truths. The day of the gathering was cloudy but vibrant, a suitable metaphor for the uncertainty that loomed over, yet couldn't extinguish their determination. As Maya set up the space, she felt a swell of pride for what they were creating. This gathering wasn't about simply discussing the restrictive norms. It was about empowerment, exploration, and reimagining what independence truly looked like for young women like them. When Amina arrived, radiating excitement from head to toe, Maya knew they had stepped into an uncharted territory together. The anxiety that once plagued them transformed into anticipation, a sense of shared purpose driving both of them. As more friends and peers trickled in, each woman held within her the story of her unique path, the paths laden with obstacles yet shining with possibility. They began exchanging tales, laughter echoing through the park as defenses crumbled and connections deepened. With each story shared, Maya felt the joyous embodiment of empowerment wrapping around them like a warm blanket. At the end of the day, as Amina and Maya looked around and witnessed the transformation of hesitant conversations into a symphony of solidarity, the enormity of their achievement washed over them. They had not only encouraged each other, they had created a network of support for those yearning to discover their own voices. Maya's mind wandered back to those early days of uncertainty and fear, contrasting them with where she stood now, at the helm of a movement, however small, rooted in sharing and growth. Through Amina, she had found the courage to challenge her own constraints, allowing herself to bask in the joys of her discoveries. They had conquered the fears together. They had proved it was possible to carve their narratives, fostering a new understanding of loyalty that extended beyond family obligations to encompass the friendships that nurtured their authentic selves. As she continued to nurture her blog, loyal followers engaged in comment sections revealing stories of their own. Each interaction reaffirmed Maya's conviction that the pursuit of personal autonomy was not just a rite of passage for Amina, or even for her, but a collective journey every woman deserved to embark upon. Maya leaned back in her chair, eyes glimmering with purpose. She had become a catalyst for change and resilience, and in this role, she stood ready to fight against the shadows of silence that loomed over their community. Confidently, she began to envision the road ahead. They would not stop here. This was just the beginning. The call for action was only growing louder. Both she and Amina understood that their fight had only just commenced, but together they had the heft of stories to lean on. This moment marked the point of no return in Maya's journey. She had entered the arena, transformed by the very act of standing up, not only for Amina but for herself, assuming the mantle of allyship in the process. Her heart raced at the prospect of creating a legacy rooted in growth, bravery, and empathy. The power of individual transformation prevailed. You need to subscribe now to follow this evolving journey and not miss out on the next exclusive emotional stories coming your way. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help these vital narratives reach those who need them most. Comment below to share your own reactions and theories about the evolution of Maya and Amina. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who are ready to embrace their own paths of personal growth.